Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Special, hello to everyone lurking in the chat and are watching in the future. This week, since Noodles Away, I am going to be talking about a movie that I love and they hate, The Iron Giant.
Okay. I'll just apologise to your viewers, Ring, that I won't be on camera today because I am a bit under the weather, just sort of on the backside of a horrible cold.
Yeah,
So I'm going to do my best to get through this one with you, though.
yeah.
So, right, do we want to talk about whether or not this movie's ET or not?
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, I know that you had something that you wanted to say about that, so I'll
No,
go ahead.
to be honest, actually, I just joked. I thought I went after because
Yeah.
Uh, just to reference people, I've only watched this morning, so I've not prepared like a load of notes. First time I've watched it, I hadn't read the book that inspired it, so it was
Yeah.
all very new to me. But that was my initial comment. I did, however, have a quick look on the Wikipedia article, and there was something about this. Um, with a filmmaker sort of saying the ET didn't go like completely at it with the army, though. I think that's the response.
Yeah. Um, though, I mean that like honestly the whole ET comparison, that being, this being said by someone who has never actually seen ET.
Okay, well, then we have a future episode of Media
Yeah.
Musings, then, don't we?
Um it honestly is probably more of a genre thing.
Yeah,
You know, the kid finds fantastic creature and has to hide it from his, parents.
yeah. I will be
Yeah.
fair to this one. Okay, this is not the worst film in that kind of like genre
Yeah.
by a long shot. If anyone's seen Mac and Me, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. The ET that's basically a McDonald's commercial.
Yeah.
So this is a lot better than that. And I got to say, I did not hate this movie at all. I actually quite enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm sounding like I'm being hard on it. I actually quite enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad that it's a personal preference and not like a cultural thing, like how it is with Christmas Story.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but and personally, like the Iron Giant is one of my favorite animated movies of all time.
Mm.
Um, you know, liked it as a kid because giant robot cool.
Yeah,
And
indeed.
I like it as an adult in terms of its scathing commentary of the McCarthy
Mm.
era American mindset, which is part of why I stuck it in, American Mythos Mega Month.
Yeah, I kind of that was the thing I think I picked up on in this that I quite enjoyed was a lot of the Cold War kind
Yeah.
of um, you know um, it's really the Cold War is really the backdrop for this story. I mean, just like when he's in school and they're watching like Duck and Cover and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, fun
even though
fact.
it wasn't the
Yeah.
original Duck and Cover, I did notice that.
Oh, yeah. When they were making the film, they couldn't find any like actual animated nuclear PSAs, so
Mm.
they made their own.
Okay. Yeah, because I think Duck and Cover was partially animated, wasn't it? And then some of
Yeah.
it was real life. But I remember the cartoon turtle.
Yeah. Yeah, like either they couldn't get access to the footage, or like they couldn't get
Mm.
permission to use it, so they essentially made their own. And if you get the DVD, they have it like they have that, just that short,
Mm.
as a separate thing that you can watch without, the kids talking about the giant in the background, or rather
Awesome.
in the foreground.
Mm.
Now I will say, there are two separate versions of the Iron Giant. Um, the film we watched, in the watch party, we watched the signature edition, which is basically exactly the same as the theatrical release, with the addition of a sequence in the middle where the giant has a flashback dream that gets projected onto the TV.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, that scene was like animated. It was storyboarded, but cut, and then as time went on, when they released they actually animated it and released it in the signature edition.
Mm.
I, I like, it doesn't really take away, it doesn't really add, well, but it does add a little bit of context into how the giant and Dean interact later in the movie.
Yeah. It's a little bit, I suppose, in a way, it's the closest you get to an origin story for the giant as well, I suppose, that little
Yeah.
sequence. So,
Now, in terms of its history as an adaptation, there was a novel, and then the Who did a rock opera based on the novel, and then I
mm,
think this was loosely inspired by the Who rock opera.
yeah,
So yeah, this is largely its own thing.
I did read that it was based on a novel called The Iron Man, and like I said, I've not read it, so
Yeah, yeah,
I
neither
can't
have I.
offer any context on it, I'm afraid.
But like, in terms of the American conception, of itself, uh, in the 1950s, it basically is embodied by our villain of the movie, Kent Mansley.
Mm,
I work for the government.
yeah. I'll just say, as an atheist, we do. I'm sure as atheist, I'm sure we do appreciate a villain called Kent as well.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I love that character. Actually, I just loved that character.
yeah,
I mean, he is. He, I mean, he does embody it well. I mean, he embodies the paranoia of the era perfectly.
yeah. Well, and
And
also the America's the best, everybody wants what we have
yeah,
jingoism of the era.
yeah, it's just everything about him, just even the way he interacts with Hogarth for a lot of the time. Like, hey, like, hey, kid, it's all like trying to be friendly and like,
Yeah,
but Hogarth sees through it each time. It's just.
yeah. And like, you know, and we could also discuss how it's, a movie about outcasts, because
Mm.
all the main protagonists
Yeah,
are, you know like, I mean, the giant is the only of his kind on his planet,
yeah,
and
and
we,
it's
in the
established that
theatrical,
yeah,
in the, he has no idea going on, and
Mm.
how in and
I think,
basic,
like you said. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Ray. Go on.
basically a lot of the plot in terms of the town as a whole is how they're reacting to news of, or to word of, this mysterious monster that's supposedly lurking in the woods outside town, and how their paranoia of the other essentially assures that the giant won't be able to be integrated into society.
Mm.
And you had something you were going to say?
No, I mean, it was just what you said about the protagonist sort of being outcast, or I mean, it's obviously because we see this with the kid as well. Is he clearly doesn't have any friends at school. Clearly, obviously, is very lonely, single. With single mother. And then, of course, you've got the beatnik as well, who I don't necessarily say Dean's an outcast as such, but he is. I suppose he is sort of representing the counterculture of the era to a degree in this movie as well.
Well, and saying he's an outcast in that, he's representing the counterculture of the era, one, and also in fact that our avatar of the American ideal, calls him a lousy beatnik, but also it's like a couple of comments from Dean implies that he is new in town. Like he recently moved there to set up his scrapyard art business.
Yeah. You kind of you'd imagine someone like him would probably be, this town he's moved to. This is not part of the cool art scene at all. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, and of course, there's another of our favorite tropes when it comes to science fiction horror genre, which is mostly Stephen King's fault, but if something weird's happening, it's happening in Maine.
Yeah.
As the entire, like, with the exception of the opening, and the Giant's Dream, which wasn't in the theatrical release, the entire scope of the story is contained in and around the small town of Rockwell, Maine. And and the reason I said the opening kind of, like, it is still kind of because he's off the coast. But or for those who haven't seen the movie, it opens with a fisherman, or some kind of sailor in a storm, talking about contacting the emergency radio, about how he's taking on water and he's going to be going down, and they ask for his coordinates, and he says, I don't know, somewhere off the coast of Rockwell. Wait, I see the lighthouse. But then it's not the lighthouse.
No, I believe it's the eyes, isn't it, of the giant?
Yeah, the eyes of the giant. And, his boat crashes into it, and he washes up on shore right under the actual lighthouse. And then we cut into where we're introduced to, Hogarth, his mother, and Dean.
Yeah. I'm gonna say, just short little things. Not that important, but it was doing my head in the whole blooming movie who the voices of the mother was. And it's only when I started looking on the Wikipedia afterwards, I damn knew it was Jennifer Aniston. I was like, ah, it was doing my head in the whole movie.
Though, I will say that this isn't. I mean, though it was made before, this isn't the first movie where you've seen the guy who voiced the giant voice a surprisingly expressive character a few words.
I am Groot.
Yep.
Isn't it a little bit sad that Vin Diesel's two best performances are just comment on him? I don't rate him particularly high as an actor, but I think, to be fair, let's be honest, he knows where his bread is buttered with action movies. To be fair, so
yeah, and I mean, he's pretty good in Riddick.
Yeah. Oh, I will say he can actually run rings in acting, in terms of acting chops, around some of the ones we had in the 80s, like the Seagals, Van Dammes, and so on. So I shouldn't be too hard on him.
Yeah, but so like I said, so in terms of the Iron Giant and the American mythos, once again, as is kind of kind of like, as is the case, or as was the case with Saving Private Ryan, this isn't an example of the American mythos in terms of the Cold War. It's a refutation of that, because while Saving Private Ryan was a refutation of the noble America fighting fighting the last good war.
Mm.
The Iron Giant is a scathing indictment of the jingoism and paranoia of McCarthy era Cold War America.
Yeah, I mean, I think even in terms of the kind of almost in a subtle way, I even sort of think that sometimes the religiosity, in a way, is just of the era is.
Yeah.
Just there's a couple of slight little digs at the prayer that when he's asked to say grace, I think was the funniest bit of the whole movie. I absolutely loved that. He was like, "Oh God!" I was creasing up at that.
Yeah, when
because it's like he's going into full evangelist kind of mode, because he's trying to like hide his reactions from his mother. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and he's like, in a way, he's not only trying to protect the giant from being discovered by his mother, but he's trying to protect his mother, because he knows that people are going to freak out if they see the giant.
Yeah, he's the most sensible person in the town in that regard. He knows the reaction people are going to have. And I mean, because the whole thing with the start of this thing is it's the whole thing is, is this a Russian thing or something? It's the whole thing throughout this movie.
Yeah, is to quote the avatar of the U.S. attitude, and once again the movie's villain, and Kent Mansley is portrayed explicitly as the villain of the piece. He is
Yes.
like he has no heroic qualities whatsoever about him. But it's I don't know. Do you know who sent it? The Russians, the Chinese, the Martians, the Canadians? I don't care. All I know is we didn't send it, and that's enough reason to blow it to Kingdom Come.
Yeah, exactly.
And that paranoia about the unknown, that paranoia about this, what, everybody's out to get America, everybody's out to destroy America. And it eventually leads to destruction in the end in the story. Because
because he essentially the irony of this is this is all about in his own mind he's protecting America, and he launches a nuclear strike against an American town. From an American ship.
Yeah.
And I think even though there's even though I did kind of I somewhat loved the comedy of this moment in a way of the whole, like I've opened, we've opened fire on the giant, and the general's like, and the giant is where?
Yeah.
And then his whole reaction is like, duck and cover.
Yeah,
and I
because
I just laughed.
He's bought the propaganda.
Yeah, and just the way the general, I just was telling it, but look, there is no duck and cover. Right? We are screwed right now.
Yeah, and the general Rogard is, we don't really see him as much in the movie, but he is essentially a counterpoint to Kent Mansley's depiction of the American, jingoistic national. I'd probably go so far to say, like, Kent Mansley's a nationalist. The general's a patriot. The general just wants to get his job done, and like he understands the seriousness of the situation.
Yeah, he does seem to have a pretty strong. He clearly has a pretty open, strong dislike of Mansley throughout this entire movie.
But he makes what he thinks are the best decisions, though his view of this situation has been distorted by Mansley, because everything he has been receiving has been filtered through Mansley. And we get to the point where Dean tells Mansley that the general has, they have to call off the attack on the giant because the giant has Hogarth.
Yeah.
And Mansley turns to the general and says, "The monster's killed a kid. We must stop it at all costs."
Yeah.
And
he's trying to do it. He's kind of misinformed for a lot of this, mainly by Mansley.
Yeah.
Is the problem. he's slightly reminds me of General Ross in the early Hulk comics.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Well, and like, one at first he's, you know, he does like he's like, and when Mansley proposes, using, trying to kill the giant by nuking it, and proposes this plan to, lure the giant away and then, or, evacuate the town and then nuke the giant. The general's response is, "You scare me."
Yeah.
Like, Mansley goes from like a cartoonish, like for the first half of the movie, Mansley is very much a cartoonish, almost buffoonish character, where he's very much the part, the punchline of the joke. Like, a lot of the humor in the first half is, just the world shitting on Mansley.
Yeah.
But then there's the turn where Kent gets the photo of the giant, and with that he has he has the backing of the U.S. military behind him, and he goes from cartoonish buffoon to almost terrifying villain.
I mean, I think you see it as well in particularly the scene where he's interrogating Hogarth.
Oh yeah,
giant,
which is after this turn.
Which is after, yeah. You really, I mean, you really see how villainous this guy is.
Yeah. It's difficult raising a child alone. We can make it more difficult.
Yeah.
And once again, as kind of the avatar of the American mind, Cold War McCarthyism mindset, he's very weaselly with his words. He's, he'll make a statement and then he'll reply, and they'll follow it up with, "and all that implies."
Yes.
And we and so, his actions, with the interrogation scene and, calling the army in, and then finally it leads up to where he's losing his grip on the situation because the general's beginning to listen to the counterculture, saying that the outside threat isn't an outside threat. It's only reactive. It's only reacting because we're poking at it with our nukes.
Yeah.
He goes for the final instigation, and realizing that he's, his villainy reaches the peak where he grabs the walkie-talkie and says, "Launch the missile now," and then it immediately crashes back down into buffoonery, where we lose whatever whatever shred of sympathy we were going to have for him, when he freaks out and says, "Screw my country, I want to live," and tries to drive away.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that bit, yeah, I said that bit kind of. I mean, yeah, that's what I said. He is obviously set up to not have any redeeming features about him as a character, really.
yeah,
And that whole bit of yeah, screw my country, bit when the whole thing was him supposedly, um,
supposedly doing it to protect America.
yeah, exactly, and and it's kind of like fuck patriotism at that moment, yeah,
And and once again, in terms of media musings, the big refrain for media musings is a lot of media is deeper than is a lot deeper than what you try and or than what it appears to be from from the surface,
mm,
because we have this commentary on American exceptionalism and Cold War paranoia, but we also have deep existential thoughts where the giant goes the giant goes through an existential crisis over you know what is death, what is he a weapon,
mm,
and you know the climax of this movie, not I mean the climax of the movie has several mini climaxes,
yeah.
but
I
like,
will. I am going to refrain from time purposes for getting into the whole nature of what a soul is and whether a soul exists or not, though. So I
well,
might refrain from that a little bit. But
though I though like Hogarth's description of what a soul is very much like it's it very much reads as something his mom told him when he was younger.
yeah, yeah,
It's it's the kind of simplified theology that you would get if all you've learned is stuff you were explained as a child, and Hogarth is what, like 10.
yeah,
So, and but also the giant, while it has its like own programming, the giant is sapient. It is
mm,
capable of reason, whether that's because it bashed its head in the crash and wiped its memory, or the power station wiped its memory, or like whether or not the amnesia it suffered contributed to that is left unanswered. But that's not the point of the movie.
no,
The two points of the movie are you know the three main themes of the movie are the scathing indictment of the Cold War era mindset of, and that you aren't supposed, don't be what society tries to label you as. You are free to choose
mm,
who you are.
yeah,
You know, you don't have to be what the government labels you as, or
yeah,
what society labels you as.
mm.
Or,
I,
to quote the movie, you are who you choose to be.
yeah. I am not a gun.
Yes. Or um uh, or in the big emotional climax of the movie, you are who you choose to be, Superman.
Yeah.
And once again we have reference, like, only a couple of weeks ago we were talking about how Spider-Man um, references Superman, and once again there are references to Superman, sprinkled throughout this movie. First, Hogarth explains, to the giant what Superman is and how he's very much like Superman in that he crashed
On
on
Earth. And,
on
yeah.
Earth and has all this power, but he only uses it for good. And that's how Hogarth sees the giant, is, or rather, Hogarth sees the giant as an innocent, and in his, child, in his own childhood innocence, is trying to steer, the giant into being a heroic figure.
Yeah.
And, and then later when they're playing in the junkyard, you know, Hogarth labels him as a Tomo, because they were, playing soldiers and robots or whatever, or that's what
Yeah.
Hogarth was thinking. And the giant sees a seafood sign, grabs the S off of it, and says, "No, I'm Superman."
Mm.
And then finally, the giant's last words, when he hears Hogarth's words, "You are who you choose to be," echoed into his head. Well, okay, not finally, because there is the, stick your hand out. Like when they find out that the giant can fly, Hogarth tells him to stick his hand out, and like
Yeah.
Superman.
Like Superman. Yeah.
And then finally, the final, you know, callback to Superman is Giant hears Hogarth's words in his mind one last time: "You are who you choose to be." And he says, "Superman."
Mm.
And then he closes his eyes and waits for the nuke to impact, as he's flying up to intercept it so that the town isn't destroyed.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That scene always gets me.
actually did sort of get me a bit. I mean, even though it's sort of like, as I said, a lot of things in this movie, I could kind of see some of it coming a mile away, but it was still done so well.
Yeah,
Even though, like I said, I was like, okay, I did that because I've made the ET jokes enough time on
yeah,
the ET comments that it's because the plot is very similar, in
yeah,
certain the formula, I'd say. Although this is obviously, there's but more of a thing about, there's the Cold War politics and so on. This is it's like I said, I find this movie as well is quite it's predictable, but it's still done so well.
yeah.
Even though you know what's coming, it's done so well.
And we'll probably end up touching on this in the, like, end of month wrap up discussion, but you know, Superman is a big, touch point in American, well, and I would
Mm.
say, well, in the American mythos, and in
Yes.
probably as in the wider Anglosphere as well.
Mm.
Not as, not as something, not as, something that we think happened, like in case of our deification of the founding fathers, or
Hmm.
or depiction of, certain events like for Saving Private Ryan, or even how we manage how we managed to get catharsis like we did with, you know, Spider-Man. But Superman is, and the reason Superman gets called back to is he like like, even especially in the 50s, because he was he was more popular back then, because
Yeah.
he was the paragon of paragons, and you can only really have a paragon or and in 1950s comics, every superhero had to be a paragon.
Yeah. I
And
mean, Superman's the ultimate one.
yeah,
And it's a whole. I mean, and especially with the way it was because I'd say the sort of the late 30s, throughout the 40s were, the real height of Superman in a lot of ways. Even though it was only founded in 38, it was such an immediate hit. But initially though, this thing was it would Superman as a character, it was like he fights for truth and justice. The whole American Way bit was a later addition,
I
because the
I think
yeah
added later in the 50s.
yeah it was more of a reflection of the time, because if we ever sort of cover Superman in any great detail, I think we may have talked about this a little bit when we touched comic when we did our comics thing. But
Yeah.
Superman was almost in a little way. He was a bit of a hero to the left in his early days. If you
Well,
the people he went after were like the corrupt politicians, bad bosses, and like abusive husbands. That these were the sort of people Superman kind of dealt with in some of those early comics. And
and actually a Superman radio arc actually damaged an incarnation of the real KKK.
oh, that, of course, yes, I forgot about that one. How did I
Yeah.
forget about that one? Yeah,
Superman fighting the KKK on the radio show
yeah,
made
because
kids want to not affiliate with the KKK,
which
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 made
of
them.
course which of course makes sense, because like a character like Superman, or even in this, like a character like the Iron Giant, it's just like the ultimate immigrant story, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's, and at the end of the day, America was built on immigration, as much as the people like the KKK like to think otherwise.
yeah, and I suppose, in a way, like the Iron Giant is a subversion of the Superman immigrant story,
Mm, yeah.
because while Superman is welcomed and you know and
Mm,
respected in American society for being a strange being from another planet who's helping people,
um,
the
but
giant is rejected and ultimately ends up
yeah,
sacrificing himself.
because Superman's got an advantage that the giant doesn't have. That he looks human and looks like the all
Yeah,
American boy.
yeah.
You
It
know.
like Superman has the advantage of, one, landing as a baby, and
Mm,
two, the fact that all the Kryptonians just happen to look like white people.
yeah. It's
And
So it's kind of why I think one of the best Superman comics is Red Sun, actually, which is where the alternative version, where he like timeline where he lands in the Soviet Union, as
yep,
opposed to
and
yeah Middle
and we
America.
were. I was planning on covering that in my, it's my time March, month,
Yeah.
but I did go with a different Superman animated adaptation.
Yeah.
Because I feel that leads to a more interesting conversation. But we will be covering Red Sun sometime.
Red Sun. Yeah, it is a must. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like for those who are interested, the Superman story we'll be covering in March is Superman versus the Elite.
Not sure I've seen that.
Or basically, the author gets frustrated and claps back at all the Watchmen stands.
Okay, yeah.
Like
I mean,
the entire thesis of the trade is why Superman doesn't kill, or
okay.
why you don't want an edgy Superman.
No. I think the DC extended universe sort of demonstrates that.
Yeah,
um, I know we've taken a bit of a tangent, but
yeah,
it is and it isn't because of the Superman references in this movie.
and
So it's relevant in that respect, I suppose.
and I will say that well, one, Superman has an impact on the American mythos, and this is
Mm,
probably the second to last chance that we are going to like be able to explore that at least this month, because I don't think iRobot um, does has any mentions or callbacks to Superman, and
not that I
also
recall.
the Iron, like I said, the Iron Giant is ultimately a subversion of of the Superman story, where we have a strange being from another planet, but this time in being taken in by a family in a small town.
Mm,
But this time, instead of being welcomed and seen as a hero, he has to sacrifice himself is
mm,
is hounded because of American jingoism.
yeah, and is I mean, I suppose ultimately, I suppose at the end of this movie, ultimately, the giant is recognized as a hero in the town. But he's well, it's not, but we kind of think he's made he's had to sacrifice himself to do that. Although, as we find out, he hasn't necessarily
Yeah.
sacrificed himself. Um,
Though honest, like, and that that ending with the glacier is in the theatrical release. Like I said, the only addition for the signature edition was
I'm
the
just trying to think. Is there somebody else actually who had a home in the North Pole? That's a. I'm just trying to think.
um
Oh, is it another Superman callback?
oh, actually probably.
I'm just thinking. Yes, this is the Fortress of Solitude moment here.
And um but like one, like, yeah, ending it before, before the blinking screw gives it a soft bittersweet ending.
Mm,
But I also really like the glacier ending.
yeah,
Like
I,
I
I, I think that's a better. And I like I said, I only have the context of the version I watched today, which has got the
Yeah.
glacier ending, and that sounds like a much better way to end it to me. But
and like I said, the glacier ending is in the theatrical release as well. The only added scene between, the only difference between the theatrical and the signature is the dream that the giant has. Like, that's not in the theatrical release. And like I said, it's almost inconsequential, but it does give a lot of it does give information on Dean's and the giant's characterization later in the story.
So
where, because that dream sequence is right before, it really explains why how Dean is, so against the giant when he, before he realizes that the giant was reacting to the toy gun as a defense mechanism. And it also helps explain the inner turmoil that, the giant is feeling in that scene where he's, he is having these dreams about, he did have this dream about, an army of iron giants invading planets and destroying worlds.
And that, I mean, which is the thing, you get the feeling that he's actually was created to be a war machine, but is turning his back on that, or whatever's happened to him, with the amnesia or whatever it is, as he's looking, he's putting it together. He does not want to be that. He certainly does not want to be a war machine.
And I will say that also, like, there is a point where the giant is kind of seen as a hero for a brief moment when he saves the kids from, falling off the roof.
Yeah.
That, the town is like, oh, what, this, like, they that's their first exposure to the giant, and they're kind of on board for a brief second until, Mansley and the army see it from a distance, and Mansley tells the general that the giant's attacking the town, and the army attacks, and then we have this sequence where the giant is trying to, run from the military without hurting anyone. And we have the climax of the giant's identity plot where, he thinks Hogarth dies because of it and loses himself to the machine. Because the final half hour or so of the movie is really like all the themes of the movie coming to their own climax, where, we have the American jingoism theme of Kent Mansley wanting to destroy the giant to the exclusion of all other considerations, culminating in the missile strike. We have, climaxing in the missile strike, we have the giants, struggle for identity and acceptance, culminating in, in Hogarth's "you don't have to be a gun" speech to him. And then we have the final acceptance of climax acceptance of the identity, where, the giant, eventually, ultimately sacrifices himself by flying into the nuke.
Yeah, sorry about that, Ring. I had a major coughing fit, so I was muting myself.
Yeah, it's all right.
So, okay, yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah. I lost what I was going to say now. I've just got over that fit, but
Yeah.
it'll come back to me. Go on, Ring, because it's going to come back to me in a minute,
Yeah.
I think. But
well, yeah, I was just explaining how basically over the course of the last 15 minutes, a half hour of the movie, like there are several like each of the various themes of the movie have their own climax.
Yes.
Where you have the American jingoism, Cold War mentality theme having its climax in Kent Mansley's breakdown.
Yeah.
You have the emotional, the emotional bond between Hogarth and the giant, and the giant's quest for identity climaxing in "You don't have to be a gun, you are who you choose to be."
Yeah.
And then we have, everything coming together in the giant's ultimate act of sacrifice.
Yes. And as I said, it's where we said at the end of it is really at the end of the movie when, of course, Dean's made the statue of the giant as a monument, where it's like the town sees him as a hit because he saved them.
Yeah.
He saved them from being nuked, and so in that act of sacrifice, he's, and obviously heavily implied that the giant and his mum and the mother get together.
Dean
and that was heavily implied throughout the movie as well. Obviously, that was going to happen. So, because it's the whole obvious. I mean, it's quite a sort of trope with these things that the boy's quite the lonely boy with a single parent or whatever, and his mother's working hard. Obviously, he's quite lonely herself, trying to raise the kids. So it's quite a sort of simple sort of trope, isn't it? But you get a lot in these movies.
Yeah. And my brain lost track of what I was going to say.
I mean, I think you knew it from the first time Dean and the mother sort of met. You sort of, and he just goes to pieces, because he's like, you kind of you sort of knew where that was going right from the beginning. It was like I said earlier, a lot of this was very predictable, but done so well.
Though to be fair, it was what was in his pants that was making him go to pieces, and I'm not talking about a part of him. I'm talking.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Is that a squirrel in your pants? Or are you just happy to see me?
Yeah. And I mean, like another animated movie directed by Brad Bird, The Iron Giant is surprisingly dark for a kid, for an animated kids movie.
It is. It actually is. That's the thing, I think, because this is the first, like I said, this is the first time I was watching this, and I guess I was expecting a little bit of I don't know. I wasn't expecting this to be such a dark movie for a kids movie. I wasn't. I guess it's because it's one of those things that for a lot of these themes or whatever. If I was watching this as a sort of 6, 7 year old, I'm not going to have the context for a lot of it.
Yeah.
But which again, it's what it's which I think these I think do make good kids movies that the adults can pick up who watch it can pick up on things that the kids aren't going to.
Like and movies like the Iron Giant and other movies other animated movies we've explored on this channel are the reason why I draw a distinction between kids movies and family movies.
Yes. And there's and what's different, I think, about this one as well is that a lot of the time with these movies, like I said, where they're sort of family ones, where it's normally the jokes that are put in that adults are going to get that you won't get as a child, like a la Shrek, or actually,
Or,
well, another good example. What was it? Myself and Noodle spent like almost 2 years covering.
yeah,
Asterix books, yeah.
And
but it's more the jokes. But in this one, it's the sort of the themes in the background, like the commentary on the Cold War and stuff like that. As a kid, you're not going to get that.
Yeah, most of the time the adult material is jokes that go over the kids' heads.
Yeah.
For the Iron Giant, most of the jokes are slapstick physical humor that's easy to that anyone can get, and then like most of the stuff that goes over the kids' heads are the deeper themes of the scathing criticism of American jingoism, the search for identity. I think kids can I think kids will understand like the outcast bit, because especially if the kid's been bullied at school, like
and both kids and adults can identify with that, because
I was more saying that that's not really one that would go over the kids' heads.
No, it wouldn't at all.
Like the political commentary definitely would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And the fact that Ted Mansley is like a satirical buffoon, farcical buffoon up until he gets up until when he actually has power, and then he becomes a terrifying threat.
Yeah.
Which can be taken as a metaphor for for nationalism, because I'm having trouble thinking of far right individuals that have been used that have been used as lol cows, but now we've had incidents like January 6th. We had like
I'm gonna say that at the time this movie was made, there's probably wasn't a lot of people on the right in that extreme that you would be able to hold up as, but now, of course, nowadays, it's gone so insane that Mansley seems a bit tame compared to some real life people now.
Yeah, or say, and that this was just before the Bush era, right at the end of the Clinton era, because it came out in 1999. But so, like, or like for instance, we have got, we went from Bush era Republicans to post Trump era Republicans who are, shooting up, you know, shooting up clubs and,
Yeah.
having insurrections.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. It's
it's all fun, it's all funny, haha, until a nationalist gets power.
yeah, yeah. I suppose that's. I mean, that's a good. In a sense, that was a. It's sort of, I know, life imitating art in a certain way. There,
Yeah, and
Um.
I can't say for certain that that's a that reading is intended by Brad Bird, seeing as how much his other works like to um kind of lean, kind of look up to Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, like the Incredibles is still one of Pixar's best movies, but yeah, there is a big, like, it there is some Randian stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
And and I mean, that's the part of media literacy and media critique is you got to understand what themes are present in a work and how, and once you know what themes are present in the work, you can decide how you want to interact with that work.
Hmm. Yeah.
um and I think we've gone through um all of the relevant themes.
Yeah. I try to think what else. I mean, what else there is to really cover in this. I was looking on, like, I'm trying to forget back to it now. I did have the Wikipedia article up, actually, because there was talk about themes that Bird himself was talking about. Sorry, I've got my tablet in front of me. I'm just trying to get
Yeah,
this thing back up, but I'll find it in a second.
yeah,
But why is it's taking so long to load now? Now I've found it,
yeah.
which is typical. Okay. 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 Themes. Okay. So when he began work on this, Sir Bird was in the midst of coping with the death of his sister, who was shot and killed by her estranged husband, and researching this source
Oh,
material.
that
Yeah.
that is another theme that we needed that we haven't really gone into. The
Yeah.
and this is very,
This is the
surprisingly
dear. Yeah.
anti-gun for
Yes.
for a for an American movie.
Now, and he learned the guy who wrote the Iron Man. He wrote. Apparently, this book was written as a means by the author, as partly as a way to helping comforting his children after his wife died by suicide. Specifically for the metaphor of the title character being able to reassess. I mean, okay, that was so. The character being able to reassemble itself after it died was a something that was written by the author of the original book for
Yeah,
but Bird was saying when his pitch to Warner Brothers, which was based on the ideas, what if a gun had a soul and didn't want to be a gun, was the way it was pitched, apparently. So yeah. So there is that to there definitely is that. There is a little, there is a bit of anti-gun stuff in this movie.
And for those who are coming in fairly late, Noodles at a Con, which is why we're discussing a movie I love and they hate.
Which is, yeah,
But, yeah, so, like, the Iron Giant is very, anti-gun, and, like, in that, well, once again, the Giants' uh, introduction to death um, is the is the
the
deer
deer.
that is shot, and
Mm.
the guns are left behind, and Hogarth explains to the giant, or Hogarth explains the concept to the giant is it it's bad to, or it's not bad to die, but it's bad to kill.
Yeah,
And Hogarth's last, uh, you know when Hogarth is trying to talk, the giant down, he says, it's bad to kill. Guns kill. You don't have to be a gun.
yeah,
You are who
and
you choose to be. Now choose.
it's obviously it's a little bit of a journey with the kid Hogarth in a sense where you remember when he goes out to find the giant. What's the first thing? I mean, he goes out essentially plays soldier and gets his
Yeah.
BB gun, and he goes out and he's essentially goes out there and dresses up as a soldier and marches out.
Yeah.
There is a little undertone of about commentary. There's a little undertone commentary on guns in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That's
And of course, Hogarth's gun is dropped and then nearly immediately destroyed.
mm,
And the only other time we see him, with a gun in his hands for the rest of the movie is when he's got the little spark pistol,
yeah,
which incites the climax of the movie where it reacts, it makes the giant's defense mechanism go off, and he you know and which leads Dean to you know think that he attacked Hogarth and drive the giant
yeah,
away, calling him just a big gun that walks. Like, the only time, like, with the exception of, Hogarth playing soldier with his BB gun, guns, that is a neutral or possibly also bad, depiction can also possibly be seen as a negative depiction because it's showing the impact that the culture at large has had. It's another commentary of the American shoot first, glorify the military commentary,
mm,
mythos, where the American military, the people with guns are there to protect you. But, aside from Hogarth with his BB gun, which is, almost immediately discarded and crushed, guns aren't ever shown in the Iron Giant in any kind of positive light. Like,
no, no, there is not a positive reference to guns in this movie. I just got it up here. I thought I'd better read this as well. Actually, when I was looking at this, is the Wikipedia article again, but it says
Yeah.
just because I made the comment earlier, this is when some critics of this film compared it to E.T. Bird responded by saying E.T. doesn't go kicking ass. He doesn't make the army pay. Certainly, you risk having your hip credentials taken away if you want to evoke anything sad or genuinely heartfelt.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's not the best dismissal of that critique. I got to be honest, but
Yeah.
yeah. So it wasn't just see. It wasn't just me that initially thought, "Oh, this is ET. This is like ET."
Yeah. And and well, I can't speak to ET because I haven't seen ET, but I will say, you know, until I'm withholding final judgment, but right now
Yeah,
I will say I prefer the Iron Giant due to the scathing political indictment.
yeah.
Like that, like this
I
is
mean, in a
probably
way,
the
this is ET with a political message in a certain way.
yeah.
Um,
Or you could say that this is probably the most anti-American movie we've covered on the American Mythos Month.
yeah,
And once again, it's a very like it captures the paranoia of the Cold War McCarthy era America, but it does
mm,
so by holding up a critical mirror to it.
yeah.
Um, and and yeah, so I think that's about it, and we have almost hit the runtime of the movie. I think we've hit
Yeah,
the I think we've hit the runtime of the theatrical version.
well, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, this isn't a long movie, so
Yeah,
it's like it's probably viewed there wasn't going to be as much to cover going into this.
yeah,
So, um, and as I said, for all like the ET comparisons, as I said earlier, when you've got movies like Mac and Me out there, which is basically a McDonald's commercial disguised as a family alien type movie, this movie stands many tiers above something like that. You know.
yeah,
But no, like I said, and I thought I had to make that point quite clear early on because I think initially it sounded like I didn't really like this. I actually did enjoy this movie.
yeah.
So um,
And also, and once again, I'll say the ET comparisons are largely due to genre construction and
it is
genre.
it's a formula, but it is a
Yeah,
formula definitely.
like the ET comparisons are because they largely fall into the same subgenre of movie. What
Yeah,
the like what the Iron Giant really wants you to compare it to is Superman.
yeah. I was just thinking there. I mean, actually, there's a few things I can make comparisons to here because there's the ET thing, there's Superman, and you got a war a essentially a war machine having amnesia and doesn't want to do this anymore. So it's also the Bourne Identity.
Yeah.
That's a story. That's a joke, but yeah,
Now, with that, I'll go ahead and say let's go ahead and move it. Well, final thoughts. Um, Scathing indictment of the Cold War. It's one of my favorite animated movies. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
yeah. I said first time I watched it was this morning. It's definitely a movie. It's worth a watch, without a doubt. There is there's some there's some good commentary on. I mean, it's obvious commentary, but it is good on like Cold War America, and McCarthyism, and I said definitely, like I said, there's some good sort of like subtle themes that are subtle under the surface, like anti-gun stuff, which I don't think necessarily is a bad thing to subtly communicate in a kids' movie if kids pick up on any of it. It's good stuff for them to be picking up on, I think.
And I will say this is the only animated. Actually, this is the only movie I've seen in the that I've seen in theaters twice.
Ooh.
As I saw it on its original release, and then in 2013, 2014.
I don't think I've ever seen an animated movie in a cinema more than once.
In 2013 or 2014 they did a special limited theatrical release for the signature edition, which I went and saw. And with that, I actually have a special presentation for the shilling.
Ooh.
So hold on. Go full screen. For those who haven't seen it yet.
So, Apologia. Now, I know it is customary for people who disagree with you to mispronounce your channel name. However, that is a meme I do not wish to partake in. But I've spent the last 3 years trying to establish myself as, well, trying and failing to establish myself as the media critique NB for the atheist YouTuber community. So when I see your most recent video on the top 10 atheist superhero characters or atheist comic book characters, I have no choice but to make a response video. You have thrown the gauntlet down, and I pick it up to make a response video with a friendly disagreement and a bit of an addendum. So for those who are watching this, I'll see you next Wednesday at noon Eastern Standard Time.
Whoa. Well, okay. So, that's a teaser.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got it pretty much all filled. I just need to do filmed. I just need to do the outro and do the editing. But yeah, Apologia did a top 10 atheists in comic books video as a response to a Christian superhero list that was in an article. And so yeah, I'll be responding to that. I largely agree with, it's a top 10 list. It's, there's not much meat to the disagreement, but I'm having fun with it.
Why not? I'm looking. I think definitely throw the gauntlet down to Apologia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he probably didn't realize that he threw a gauntlet because I'm tiny and invisible, but he threw a gauntlet. I am picking. I am picking it up.
This is Ring. This is the negative effect I'm having on your channel here. This is what this is. I've got a bit of a reputation. So as tiny as I am, because I'm not, my channel's not that much bigger than yours. As tiny as I am, I've kind of got a little bit of a reputation as being the pain in the ass who calls out other atheists. So I think I'm having a negative. it's rubbing off on you ever so slightly.
Well, okay.
Learn you well, my Padawan.
Well, let me put it this way. For those of you who have seen my partial response to Jimmy Snow about the Taliban,
Yeah.
This response is infinitely more friendly and cordial than Jimmy.
And I will say I
Jimmy
think you were
Snow.
very fair you were quite fair to Jimmy as well.
Yeah.
In your response, and I genuinely, because I'm going to be hands on the table. This is just me. I don't like Jimmy Snow, and I probably would have been a bit nastier in my response, but I think you were a lot fairer than I probably could have been.
Yeah. So, like, when it comes to this response, it's very much a friendly disagreement on where a character is placed, and then a discussion of other missed tropes that were brought up. Because Paul Gia does have a brief section where he talks about the trope of most atheist characters being being depicted as intelligent. But he did miss a couple of other commonalities that I will bring light and that I'm bringing light to, and saying it's it's maybe gone from trope to kind of edging into stereotype territory, perhaps.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's a disagreement on a placement of one of the characters. It's an expansion of the discussion about tropes, and then I wrap it off with suggesting a couple of other characters. So, like I said, it's infinitely more friendly and cordial than how I handled Jimmy Snow, and I handled Jimmy Snow with kid gloves.
Yeah, like I said, you were a lot fairer to Jimmy Snow than I would have been. Because I'll admit my biases. I don't like the guy, so you were very fair.
Yeah. So with this coming Wednesday, around noon EST, I'll be premiering that, and then of course on Sunday, we will be discussing iRobot.
Okay, cool. Another film I have yet to watch.
Yeah.
Actually, I might not be here next Sunday. Actually, though, Ring, I must actually warn you. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. I don't know if there's gonna be a video next week or not. This could go. I've got a feeling this could go very badly. I'm supposed to be meeting in real life Isaiah from RHE podcast. Dr. Evil himself is in the UK. Ooh. Yeah, I'm not sure. I sort of get on with him, even though I don't really. I get on with this guy despite the fact I don't really agree with him about anything. But I don't know if there will be some kind of video. He actually wants to debate me again live in a pub, and I'm like, dude, we're not. To me, I don't. No, we're not doing that. Come on, but there might be something we might film together. We'll see. We shall see.
Yep. And with that, might as well move to taglines.
As you know, I don't really do taglines. Just take care of everyone. And by the way, if you're in the UK, one thing: support your postal workers. That's all. That'd be it.
Yeah, and remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on too often we forget that.
So